Welcome to an episode of Bargain Saturdays, and it's time to return to Sky Dancers Volume 1, Flights of Fancy, with Love Lost, Love Found. It is either episode 10 or 8, depending on who you ask. And regardless, I'd say this episode is absolutely horrendous. Seriously, what were they thinking when they wrote this episode? They included Sky Clone in this episode. Why? No, seriously, why? When you hear what the other half of this story is, you're going to be scratching your head probably too. Because we learn in this episode that Jade's mother abandoned her daughter and her husband for over a decade to pursue a career as a prima ballerina.
I never gave you a chance to know me.
And what makes you think I want that chance now?
You don't know what it was like back then. I was a world-famous prima ballerina.
And you left Father and me because your career was more important to you than we were.
My career was important to me, yes, but try to understand what it was like. A woman couldn't have a career and a daughter in those days.
And they decide they're going to only dedicate half an episode to having Jade work her way through her feelings about that. Like, this is a huge emotional weight to deal with, all of a sudden just being slammed into you like a freaking train, Like, oh, the person that gave birth to me, is going to finally move back in the house and be my mom after over a decade. Like, how do you deal with that? How do you process that? Like, there's so much family drama to be had here, and character growth and development opportunities for her various friends and how they respond or advice they give, or they just try and comfort her because they don't have any advice really to give. Like, what advice do you give someone in this situation? Can say a lot about you as a character, which is why I kind of get annoyed with Skyla in this episode, because she's like, oh, the heart only grows more fond when you're apart, and like, I don't think that's going to make up for being gone for over a decade, or all those nights, Jade cried herself to sleep because her mom wasn't there.
Save the tears, they don't mean anything to me. I've cried enough of them without a mother to comfort me.
Like this episode doesn't think it should spend time on this, working its way through this, in a meaningful way. Stuff like this is why shows fail, like bad writing is not something the audience is usually willing to forgive, and this is just a really bad idea to put into a kid's show if you aren't going to dedicate proper time to it. I mean, this is something if you're telling a story, that had more stuff carrying through as arcs, you could dedicate almost an entire season to something like this in some shows if you're working with just 13 episodes. Like, there's just so much emotional baggage to deal with. Like, why do you think you can resolve this in 10 minutes, Sky Dancers? Why do I have to spend half the episode on Sky Clone when you know he's going to fail? Because he always fails. Like, it just frustrates me so much. I mean, I realize I shouldn't say they can't talk about this topic, but if they're going to deal with this topic this poorly, they shouldn't have touched it. Like, I've driven myself like raw and had to stop and go get some drinks and stuff to try and rehydrate my throat because I keep doing takes on this and I'm just never satisfied because I can never get across just how much this episode pisses me off. I'm sorry, but I just can't come up with the right words for this. Like who wrote this and thought it was a good idea to put out there? Like seriously, why didn't someone on the executive team just put this on the chopping block and just be like, no, and kill it? Like, this is a story that if you had to tell it, you could put it into an entire book to work your way through it. And then you could, afford other distractions, like a villain scene popping up and stuff like that, if you had more time. I hate when writers, take what could be an interesting idea and then basically utterly ruin it by not, dedicating enough time to telling that story.
My foot! The imp can prance!
The imp can dance!
And I'll kick your both in the pants if you don't keep quiet. Now grab that box.